Welcome back to Scandinavian Cookbook. I'm Sylvia, and today I'm making kanelsnurr, or Scandinavian cinnamon buns, filled with pumpkin custard. I've shared a recipe for solskinsboller before. Solskinsboller are cinnamon buns filled with a vanilla custard, but I decided to give these a bit of an autumnal twist and fill these with pumpkin custard instead. I like to think these are kind of a fusion of American and Norwegian desserts. Americans love pumpkin desserts and Norwegians love their cinnamon buns, and so I kind of feel like this is the best of both worlds, or both countries. These cinnamon buns are light and fluffy with a cardamom dough and cinnamon sugar filling, and then the custard center is actually the same recipe that I use to make pumpkin pie. So it's essentially a cinnamon bun with pumpkin pie filling in the center. They're so good. These taste like autumn to me. I hope you love them as much as I do. I'm linking the recipe in the description box below. And while you're there, click subscribe for more Scandinavian recipes. Pre-ground cardamom for this if you want, but I really recommend grinding your own cardamom seeds if you can, because they have so much more flavor than pre-ground cardamom. I use seeds from green cardamom pods and I just grind them in a mortar and pestle. Super easy, and it will make such a difference. You will taste the cardamom so much more in these buns. The milk mixture is cool enough to add the yeast. Make sure you wait until it cools, because if the mixture is too hot, you're going to kill the yeast. So you do need a bit of patience here. I usually heat up the milk and butter and sugar a bit before I'm ready to get started on the buns anyway. So I do that immediately, and then I find all my other ingredients and get myself ready then. Now I'm adding almost all of the flour, but I'm gonna save a little bit for rolling out the dough on the counter and kneading it. You never wanna add more flour than necessary. I like to keep the dough quite sticky when I turn it out onto the counter, and then I add a bit more flour until I'm able to knead it. Okay, now the dough is getting quite hard to stir with a spoon, so I'm going to turn it out onto my countertop. I like to knead the dough on a silicone mat if you have one. I think it's helpful, it keeps everything cleaner. Otherwise, just use lots of flour on your counter instead. Knead this dough in a mixer if you prefer. I always like to knead my dough by hand, especially this dough is quite easy to knead. It takes about 10 minutes, and yeah, just put on some music, enjoy the process. Okay, now the dough is nice and elastic. I'm going to put it back in the mixing bowl, cover, and let it rise until it's about double in size, which usually takes about an hour in my home, but it will vary a bit depending on how warm your room is, what kind of yeast you've used, so just check on it. And while the dough is rising, we can get started on the pumpkin filling. I always stock up on canned pumpkin when I go back to the US because it's so expensive in Norway. This can would cost probably $12 here, maybe more. I think it's $2 in the US. and I'm going to New York in a couple of weeks, so now I feel comfortable using up all of the pumpkin that I've saved because soon I can restock. So I'm making lots of pumpkin desserts now. I know, I'm so basic. Oh, I just love the smell of the pumpkin. It smells like the holidays. I'm going to be heating this filling over the stove until it thickens into a nice custard that we can fill each bun with. So now that it's nice and smooth, I'm just gonna pour it into, actually this is the same saucepan that I used to heat up the milk and butter for the cinnamon bun dough. I haven't even washed it. It's fine to just reuse it. There's just milk and butter in it, a bit of sugar. Now the dough has finished rising, we're going to roll it out into a really large square. And now we can spread the cinnamon, butter, and sugar mixture across the dough. And when you're making cinnamon rolls, typically you would leave the top inch or two free from filling. But when making these buns, we also leave the bottom inch or two free as well, because we're going to be filling the center of the rolls with the pumpkin custard. So we don't want there to also be lots of cinnamon butter there too. It just gets really messy. So I'm leaving both the top and the bottom a couple inches free from the filling. Now we're just going to carefully roll the dough up from the bottom. And just be really gentle here in case the dough sticks to your counter a bit. If you go slowly, it should be fine. There's so much butter in this dough that it doesn't stick too much. And then once you get to the top, just pull the top over your roll of dough. Very easy. And then I'm just going to roll this down to the center of my counter again for slicing. And I guess fairly thin slices, about an inch and a half. But that's kind of up to you as well. If you want a really thick cinnamon roll or kind of thinner, which will become a bit crispier. And now I'm going to space these out on a baking sheet and give them quite a bit of space between each bun because they will puff up in the oven as well. And when you're placing them on the sheet, you can just kind of make them nice and round again if they got smashed down when you were slicing them. And now we will make a hole in the center of each bun. Don't make the hole all the way down to the bottom. You do want the bottom to be intact, but we're gonna make it at the top of the bun. We're gonna make it quite big because these do expand in the oven and you don't want the custard to just puff right out. So I try to make as much space as possible. Also, I love the pumpkin filling, so the more filling, the better. all of the buns with the pumpkin filling, you can cover them and we're gonna let them rise for another 30 minutes before putting them in the oven to bake.